This is where we take real life questions and try to help people out by chatting about them. Now, at the end, put your 2 cents in because I want to hear what you have to say about this. So, let's get started. My husband wants to move his rude mother into our home instead of sending her to a retirement home. Would it be wrong to give him the ultimatum of me or her? Hi, I'm Ann. Y'all ready to chat? Many Generation Xers find themselves in this situation. In fact, we're called the sandwich generation because we have our aged parents on one side and our children on the other side. Some of them are teenagers still, and some of them may be young adults. And they may be living with us on top of it because a lot of young adults do. And when you have an aging parent, it's hard. Now, I'm not in this position yet. Well, I have to decide whether or not, or let her decide whether or not she wants to move in with me or not, or whether I can have her move in. My mother is 86 years old, and she lives about 700 miles from me on her own, plays tennis, goes to water aerobics. She's doing great. But you and I know that this could change like that. I mean, she could have a stroke, she could have a heart attack. You never, God forbid, you never know. So you need to be prepared for this. We know when you take an older adult into your home, it's not just them living with you as a roommate, they could need help. I didn't have my husband's parent live with me, but I had something similar to this happen. My husband informed me one day that his son was moving in with us. His adult son was moving in with us. And he had gone through a terrible divorce, lost his home. He had nowhere to go. So my husband invited him to live with us, but he didn't discuss it with me. He just informed me he was living there. And I wasn't real thrilled about it. But the kid was moving in as he told me that he was moving in. So not much I could do about it. Several months later, I brought a cat home, another one, because we had 2. I brought a cat home from the animal shelter. And my husband threw a fit. He's like, we don't need another cat, take it back. And I said, I brought home a cat. It's not like I brought home a 30-year-old man. That set the argument a little more. In other words, I got all passive aggressive. Now, don't do that. Find another way to deal with it than getting passive aggressive. This woman had something similar happen to her. She's being dictated to. My mother's coming to live with us. No discussion, no what do you think, nothing. And the result is you're put in a bad position in this situation. Because if you say, absolutely not, my MIL is not going to move in with us, you're going to look like the bad guy. So you either have to be miserable and have her move in, or you're going to look like the bad guy to the mother-in-law, to any siblings your husband has, to any cousins your husband, because you know your husband's going to tell everybody, my wife wouldn't let my mother move in. So now you are the bad guy. Not fair. You say this woman is difficult. Ugh, that in itself is bad, but what kind of shape is she in? I mean, we don't know this variable. Is she dementia? Going into the first stages of dementia? Is she physically okay or starting to get sick? These are variables we need to talk about, or you need to talk about with your husband. And quite frankly, even though these are important to discuss, it doesn't matter because you don't want her there, regardless of how her condition is. So it's time to have a hardcore discussion with your husband. And when I say discussion, I don't mean, hell no, this woman's not moving in with us. I mean, ask him some questions. What's his reasoning? Where's this coming from all of a sudden? Why are you dropping this bomb on me? What is your reason for wanting your mother to come live with us? Because once he gives you the reason, you might have a suggestion that will cancel out having to move her in. For instance, is she lonely? Well, I want to move her in because she's lonely. There are ways to not be lonely. There's got to be a senior center around there somewhere that she can get involved in. Where are her friends? There have to be some activities, church activities, anything that she can get involved in. And let's face it, if you and your husband are working, she's going to be alone anyway. How is that going to alleviate the loneliness? Is she sick? But have you considered home health care for her? Have you considered assisted living? I mean, if he doesn't want a retirement community or home, assisted living assists, that's the word, assists a senior citizen in staying independent to a certain extent by monitoring their medications, by making sure they're safe. These are all things that even you cannot do if you're away from the house. You can't make sure she's safe. You don't have alarms in your house. So let's talk about assisted living and whether or not that's an option. And I would say ensure your husband knows he wouldn't be sending her, and I hate doing that, but it's got to be done, sending her to a home. That's not what you're doing. You're helping her make a decision to get more care than what she currently has. And there are a lot of seniors that once they move into assisted living are quite happy and actually flourish. So this might be the best thing you can do. And don't think in terms of placing. I mean, my mom and I went and looked at some assisted living facilities. They call them campuses, some assisted living campuses. She's 700 miles away, and if she does get sick, she didn't want to move in with me. She doesn't want to do that. She wanted to go to assisted living. So we went to several assisted living places, and I get a phone call from one of them, and the guy says, "Are you ready to place your mother now?" I'm not going to place my mom and I laughed about that one. And now anytime she is forgetful or gives me a hard time about something, like that bosses me around, I always say, "I'll place you." It's become a joke with us. But it's no joke, really, about sending or placing your mother-in-law somewhere. It's a joint decision. Is this the best place to be? If your husband is vehement about his mother moving in with you, make it very clear to him, you are not going to be the caretaker. You are not going to be the caretaker. I'm going to repeat that one more time. You are not going to be the caretaker. Hand him a piece of paper and write it in the form of a contract, and make a list on that piece of paper. And this list should include, he will be washing any soiled linen, washing clothes, even if she isn't infirm, she'll want her clothes washed. You're not going to do it. Taking her to doctor's appointments, even if he has to leave work. She may not be sick, but she may not drive. It has to be taking the doctor's appointments. He's doing it. Taking her to hairdresser appointments. Leave work, spend your Saturday, however you have to do it, you're taking her. Bathing her. If she gets sick, who's going to bathe her? You're not going to do it. You're not the caretaker. He is. How about making sure she takes her medications properly and on time? That's the biggest cause of seniors getting sick or having a major problem, is not taking their medication properly. You're going to make sure she does? Dressing her. If she's no longer capable of dressing herself, someone's got to do it. You're not the caretaker. You're not going to do it. It's on him. It may even be on the passive-aggressive side a little bit. Who's going to reimburse you for all these added expenses? Your utility bill's about to go up. Someone's about to eat your food. There are miscellaneous things that she should be paying for. She'd be paying for them if she was on her own. She should be paying for them with you. Who's going to let her know about that? Who's going to collect not so much the rent, but the expense money? You're not going to do it. You're going to have him do it. Now, I'm not a big believer in ultimatums, and I tell you why I'm not, because they can backfire on you pretty quickly. You might say, I'm leaving if you bring her in, and he's like, fine, I'm bringing her in, get out of here. Then what do? Or he may go, all right, I won't bring her in, and then he resents you and causes problems between you and her, or you and his family, as I pointed out earlier. Don't give an ultimatum, but be very firm. You do not want her living there. And if she does, you're dealing with her, not me. It's a tough one. And many of you might be in the same situation, and you are under no obligation to care for your mother-in-law. You're no obligation to care for anyone but your children and yourself, and maybe your husband. But you're not under any obligation to take care of her. Of course, if all else fails, you can always go get a cat. Thank you for joining me, and as always, put your comments below. I'd love to hear what you think about this. Until next time, thanks for the chat.